If you were to ask me what my favorite Sonic soundtrack is, I'd say Unleashed, 06, Mania, Adventure, and Shadow the Hedgehog are some of the best. If you were to ask me who my favorite voice of Sonic is, I would say Jason Griffith, but Roger and Ryan have done some incredible work as well. But if you were to ask me what my favorite Sonic game is, without a doubt, I'd say Sonic Generations. Now that's probably not a very surprising answer, and I'm sure most people will just accept the fact the game is the best one and leave it at that. But this game is extremely important to me, and has shaped my love of Sonic as a whole, so I felt like I should explain why I appreciate this game so much. Now for the sake of keeping this opening brief, I really don't think I need to go over the entirety of Sonic's history up to this point with his creation and legacy and what have you. If you're watching a video about Sonic Generations, I'm going to assume you have at least a semi-decent understanding of the Hedgehog's backlog. Besides, as is the nature of this game, I'm certain I'll have lots to talk about regarding the series as we dive deeper into it. The simplest rundown you need is this guy is blue and runs fast, this guy is evil and makes robots, and this foxchild has been a wanted criminal. Get it? Got it? Good. We begin our story at Green Hill Zone, just like every other Sonic game released in the past decade. Although it wouldn't really be fair to compare this to any of those later versions, so how does it stack up compared to the original? Well, for just being a take on Green Hill in HD, it's pretty decent. While the semi-realistic art style has quite a different feel compared to the original's slightly more abstract style, it still definitely feels like Green Hill through and through. You got some nice straightaways to really get going, somewhat tricky platforming, and those iconic loops and corkscrews to keep the pace up, as well as lots of alternate paths and routes to take. Which is all well and good, but I don't know how much longer I can sell you on another Green Hill, so how about we move on to where the actual story begins. So we jump ahead to Sonic's birthday, with all of Sonic's lovely and amazing friends gathered. And Sonic gets what I've always wanted for my birthday, a hot dog. Then all of a sudden Satan shows up just to ruin everything. I hate it when that happens. So Sonic dies and ends up in white space. Basically our hub for the adventure.
Where am I? Where am I?
We're properly introduced to it later, so let's just jump into our first modern Sonic level and woo! Holy shit, this is awesome! The pure sense of speed and action in these stages is incredible, and the moment-to-moment gameplay, from running through the loops to rail grinding or just boosting and homing attacking through all the enemies and obstacles, is immensely satisfying. My favorite moment of this stage is when you've made it to this little cave here and you see this big-ass chopper hanging out inside it, and after you grind for a bit, you see it start chasing you, and Sonic does this cool-as-hell head motion, egging it on to follow him, and after it does, you launch down to the cave after just barely avoiding it, while pulling off a few tricks right before. And you're just back to running like it wasn't even a bother to him. It's just moments like that which breathe so much life and excitement to this game, keep you wondering what'll happen next, or what curveballs or cool set pieces the game will have in store for you. The stage ends with a chance to do some quick stepping, which isn't super involved, but it gives you a moment to admire the lovely visuals before you're thrown into the rest of the game. But before that, we saved our best friend Tails! The previously mentioned wanted fox criminal, so we get to have a quick chat with him before the next level.
Totally strange.
No stranger than rescuing genies in magic books or saving aliens in an interstellar amusement park. I'm more concerned about finding our friends.
Bro, he said the thing where he mentioned previous games, bro!
Wow, you weren't kidding when you said soon. I thought you already left.
Tails, you fucking dunderhead. That is clearly not how Sonic looked 5 seconds right before you just saw him. Is he stupid or something? Anyway, with Green Bean out of the way, we're now on to the next level, Chemical Plant from Sonic 2. By far one of my favorite Sonic locales. I just think Sonic running through factories fits the best given the theme of Eggman with his badniks and machines. I love it so much, I wish it was reused 4 games in a row like Green Hill. But it's only been used 3 games in a row. Well, whatever. The level itself is still really solid. It nailed recreating the vibes of the original, with help from the Boppin' remix. The classic Sonic remixes of the first 3 zones are some of my favorite themes in the game. All they really do is just add extra beats and rhythms to the original Genesis OSTs, but they really help in translating a stage's atmosphere and style into 3D. The best part is easily being able to go so fast you nearly outrun the camera on these long downward stretches, and the not best part is this stupid-ass pink chemical stuff. But I guess it's gotta be there to be authentic, or else the immersion would crumble without it. At least all the other things I hear, like the blue blobs coming out of the pipes, or the tubes that you travel through. Overall, another great showing for Act 1. Now how about we jump into Act 2? And let me just say that even though we're only on the second level, this is already one of my favorite modern acts in the game. You start with this really cool twisty turn paths that loop around each other, a really cool reinterpretation of the double helix shaped paths from the original. You can even run on them. It takes you to this extra little shortcut with a light speed dash that I'll fail over and over and over again, but always try to take because it's so satisfying to get right. But if you're going down the normal path, you get this little drifting and rail grinding section that's fun to take if you're a bitch. Running on the Mega Mac, that's the name I found after I looked it up on Sonic Retro, here and leading into this water slide is so dope, and afterwards it launches you into this free fall. A rather common trope seen in a lot of the 3D Sonics, but the use of the aforementioned blue blobs helped this one fit well with the theme of the stage. Same with the music, and this arrangement feels like a freaking Heroes track with the excellent use of guitars and synths. You know, I should take this time to mention how a lot of people consider Sonic 2 to be the best 2D Sonic, or even the best Sonic game of all time, with its great cohesion, level design, and introducing staples to the series such as Tails and the Spin Dash. They're wrong, but it's okay, we all are sometimes. Just like how I was probably wrong for choosing an Xbox Series X as my non-Nintendo console of choice this generation. But it was the only way I could play Generations at Unleashed on a modern platform. Now let me just swing around here and... I don't think it's supposed to happen. Yeah, apparently this is a glitch only present in the Series X and S next-gen upgrade versions. And there are some other glitches only in this version I've heard of, but I don't know. This thing makes the game funnier. You can still take the shortcut there, by the way. You just gotta make sure you're boosting. And as we wrap up this level, you can get a good look at the destroyed factory aesthetic Modern Chemical Plant was going for. It didn't really add anything to the level design itself. It's just cool as hell. It's a new cutscene with Tails time.
Tails!
This chemical plant feels familiar. I'd never forget a smell like this. And that pink water makes me really nervous.
Okay, real quick, I just gotta ask, why did they stop doing these after only the second level? I know they're kind of pointless and don't really mean anything for the game's story, but the game's story is already stupid to begin with, so who fucking cares at this point? Like, what if after City Escape, Shadow was standing around and Sonic said something like, "This reminds me of the time you made me a wanted criminal because you were upset about the only two people you ever knew who created you and loved you and were killed in a military cover-up." How's that going, by the way?
I just love Latinas, Sonic.
But I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Moving on from that, we're now on to the Sonic 3 representation, Sky Sanctuary, and this is where it's at. 3 and Knuckles is absolutely some top-tier Sonic, and one of my favorite Sonic games and 2D platformers of all time. And Sky Sanctuary was a pretty good choice of representation for it. And good on Sonic Team for showing some restraint and only reusing it once. Okay, look, I know I've bitched about this 3 times in a row now, but the constant level reusing after Generations is one of the lamest things about those games, especially for a series that seemed to pride itself on coming up with unique zones and locations for every game. This game is still the best to do it, no doubt. It's got a neat time travel plot that ties the concept of reused level designs together in a fun little adventure. Plus, this is the only one to really do it and make the levels actually, like, good. I just think that the coolness of it was unfortunately diminished because of what came after, as this would have been pretty dope for a special one-off occasion, rather than the standard for Sonic games going forward. Anyways, where are we? Oh yeah, Sky Sanctuary. Personally, I was never the biggest fan of this level just by itself. Now in the context of Sonic 3 and K's story, it's pretty neat as a cool climactic set piece before the real endgame starts. But as a standalone level, I was never really won over by it. The rendition in Generations, though, it's really something special. That's right, this game can make middling Sonic stages a lot more interesting. Maybe able to fix my crumbling marriage next. It really does a good job at fleshing out the concept of the stage that the original was going for. Everything has such a fun, bouncy feel to it with the clouds you can hop on and the egg robots you can bop on to reach some extra paths, and there definitely is a lot going on in this stage. This really feels like the first moment where the game starts getting serious with its levels. Not that Chemical Plant or Green Hill are pushovers or anything, but that's definitely seen as the beginner baby stuff. Obviously to ease you into the game before the game really starts to kick it into high gear, but this is when the game is really going to start taking itself freaking seriously now, which can be seen in a lot of the nuances Sky Sanctuary had. For the longest time, I never knew you could spin dash up this slope to skip this little platforming section here, but it's just one of the trove of skips and cuts the game has in store. I'd say the biggest gimmick this stage has is towards the end. The stage splits into 3 paths, each fully featured and not just some 20-second long detour. All 3 paths end in a super cool way, by running up a crumbling tower echoing the end of the original Sky Sanctuary after the Metal Sonic fight, which is really the one thing I wish they kept for this incarnation. I'm not asking for a whole Mecha Sonic battle in the middle of the stage, but even just a cool cameo or moment where he screws you over. Like, what if the reason the tower started collapsing was because he destroyed it or something? Again, calling back to Sonic 3. See, even I can find flaws in this game, and I think it's the best thing since Sliced Adderall. Act 2's up next. I know I'm as shocked as you are, and it's got so many intersecting routes and sudden turns that it could be mistaken for I-94. I swear this stage feels like it has 5 sextillion different ways it could be played. I've never had 2 playthroughs of Sky Sanctuary ever feel the same, because just when I think I've discovered every nook and cranny this stage has, I always end up discovering something new to me in repeat playthroughs. A rather impressive feat for this game's more linear type beat. Like at this part inside the second tower you visit, there's gotta be at least like 4 completely separate routes that all intertwine and weave in and out of each other, which is what I think Sonic should strive to succeed at, looking around for the best route to take while zipping and zooming across all manner of lively and unique stages. Well, we've officially concluded all of the major levels of the classic era. Now it's time for some serious encounters. But since only 6 acts and 2 bosses in every era means the game would only last as long as a pack of Newports, they had to pad the runtime out somehow. And I know this is what a lot of people usually dread in every Sonic game, from half-baked gameplay styles to pointless retreads of the exact same stage but something slightly different or with another character. So how does this game give you something to do? Well, it all lies in the white space. As some of the most iconic hubs in video games go, it doesn't seem like much, but it's certainly nothing to sneeze at. It's only restricted to a 2D plane, but I think that might represent how Sonic is always moving forward, taking little time to look back, and facing every new challenge or adventure with its full strength and speed, while making new memories and meeting new faces all along the way. Which I think white space is a perfect visual and physical representation of just that. You get all that, and you get to run around some neat little platforming sections above each stage as a way to get to the missions for each zone. The missions are kinda pointless retreads of the exact same level, but they actually change the levels more than just a little bit, I swear. Each zone contains 5 missions for both classic Sonic and modern Sonic to take on, each taking the base levels, usually a small chunk of them, and then adding a quirky little stipulation or event that's happening in them. The most prominent mission of all of them, though, is the Doppelganger race. And it's just a simple ghost race with an opponent that's not hard to beat at all. So it's basically just an excuse to play the level again, which, don't mind if I do, I say, wiggling my fingers mischievously. I think this offers a great alternative to anyone just looking to get in, get one challenge completed, and get the boss gate key for each zone required to progress to the rest of the game. But I like saying more words about this game, so why don't we go over the rest of the mission, shall we? Modern Sonic's first mission is Look Out Below. It's got all these platforms that collapse like the donut blocks from Mario. Classic Sonic has the Buzz Bomber's Revenge, which just feels like an average summer day with how many fucking bees there are. It's Challenge 3 and Knuckles, starring Knuckles. It's just a race to get to the end with some big-ass badniks, but Knuckles is here and I really like Knuckles. Tails is also back for the second modern mission, the Way Past Fast race. You race Tails in his Tornado, and with Sonic racing on foot, this is the closest to Sonic R we've ever gotten since that game, which is why the Super Sonic Racing remix in this challenge is perfect. Cash Cash and Jun Senoue absolutely cooked with this one. And the vocal samples from the goddamn Sega Saturn 1995 promo tape are perfect.
Introducing Sega Saturn.
Some of the other missions have remixes of some pretty interesting Sonic tunes of the past. I believe the other 4 are Balloon Park from Sonic 3, the title theme of Sonic 3D Blast on the Saturn, Emerald Beach from Sonic Battle, and the 2-player race theme from Sonic Heroes. Some really interesting picks, I gotta say. Swing Set Circus sounds just like what it is. There's a lot of swings swinging around, and you got a platform on them. Green Hill also has this pretty dusk aesthetic, which is really quite nice. But I'm just disappointed at the lack of clowns when this is supposedly a circus. Jump Rush has a bunch of jump pads added to the stage. I might have given these missions a bit too much credit earlier. High Speed Challenge is funny because it reminds me that even with the power sneakers this game has, that's not even really the fastest classic Sonic can really go because his spin dash is so unbelievably broken. In the Boost Gauge Challenge, you're introduced to one of the many skills in the game. Skills are a great way for a change of pace between level revisits to see how giving two Sonics different properties can sometimes majorly change how you approach certain stages or events. Chemical Plants missions start off with the One Ring Challenge. I'd make a joke referencing The Lord of the Rings, but I haven't seen those movies. One more ring to rule them all! Classic Tails has his moment to shine in Toxic Skies. It's just a mission based on using Tails' flying to carry Sonic, but it's really nice that they implemented the Tails flight in this game, as it's one of the biggest staples of 2D Sonic to me. Which switch is which? I don't know, stop asking me, bitch. The Bubble Shield returns in the Bubble Shield Challenge. Once you clear it, you unlock the Bubble Shield as a skill to equip at any time. But if you ask me, I think it would have been cooler to have them placed through the level design naturally, because this feels kinda just like a band-aid solution on the whole thing. At least the elemental shields are in the game at all, I suppose. It's time to grapple with some grabbers. There's a lot of grabbers in this mission. Okay. The Invincibility Challenge is really funny because it's literally just walking on a bunch of spikes placed on the path while you keep collecting conveniently placed invincibility monitors. Underwater Ring Machine sees you keeping up with a sprinkler bot to collect enough rings. Amy's mission is a fun little one, with you needing to line up that gauge to have her send you up higher. Anytime Amy gets to use her hammer, I love it, so this one is a goodie. The World's Greatest Treasure Hunter is back for the first Sky Sanctuary Challenge. This one is so Sonic Adventure 2, with Knuckles digging up and searching for these gold medals. The radar this time is a huge arrow above Sonic, which is giving me some heavy, crazy taxi vibes, which I can really dig. Well, Sega did own the patent for Big Arrow telling you what to do, so I'm glad they're able to get some use out of it. Egg Robo Rush is the featured mission of everyone's favorite Sonic R competitor. Alright, moving on to another Boost Gauge Challenge, which gives you a slightly smaller boost gauge, but you already got the first one at maximum size, so this one's just fucking pointless, I guess. Aerial Paradise shows that Sky Sanctuary is quite lovely at night, but aside from a lot of warp points, I genuinely don't think anything else about this stage has changed. Balloon Bonanza is up next with a fucked up piss sky texture for some reason, but has a lot of funny balloons. Yippee! Ring Time gives you a really weird ability. You basically get the Midas touch, but as a shield, sort of? Well, the enemies just turn into rings around you, I guess. And the music that plays is Tube Panic? The special stage music from Knuckles Chaotix? Everything about this is bizarre, so I'm moving on. Amy's Universal Gravitation is just a race on that stupid little platform, so it's great, I love it. And finally, for the classic era missions, we have High Speed Hijinks, which is... Hey, you just stole this from Mario Galaxy in the Fast Faux comments. Well, whatever. We're now ready to conclude things with the boss and rival of the era. The first rival is Metal Sonic, and even in his little classic form, he's still dope as hell and gave us the Stardust Speedway Bad Future remix, which is probably one of the greatest Sonic songs of all time. He also makes those funny little robot noises from Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games, which is amazing, and I wish it was done more in the main series titles. The duel itself isn't the hardest. But for the first boss, I guess that makes sense. Glad it gave us some real CD representation, because I love everything about CD and its aesthetics. But the actual game design itself is... Why is this one of the most subtle yet sickest moments to come out of Sonic? I know it's literally just doing the two characters mimicking each other's motions like a mirror gag, but Sonic casually checking himself out in the mirror has no right to be this cool. And you just know he's glad he still looks this good, despite the fact he's getting older, what with it being his birthday and all. Brushing the constant looming threat of time and aging aside us, the Death Egg robot has appeared for our first boss. This one especially got hit with the early game babification, because the original one from Sonic 2 is one of the trickiest bosses in the whole 16-bit era, in my opinion. I remember first playing this on my old shitty Samsung tablet and wanting to eat it for how frustrating it was making me. Nowadays I can whoop it real good, but that's not to say this boss feels like a cakewalk in comparison. At least they make the structure interesting with you needing to hit its butt a few times. Then transitioning to the next phase with you needing to direct Robotnik into hitting the bombs you set up with the timers. Not hard at all, but at least it's got a lot more going on than the original. Satan returns after the battle, finally sending Robotnik to hell where he belongs. But before we even got time to mourn, it's time for Sonic and Sonic to formally meet.
I can't believe there's two of me.
I can't believe your mic quality got worse, Sonic.
Finally, enough yapping about the classics, because we're now on to the era with attitude. Tentatively referred to as the Adventure Era, its namesake being both adventure titles, as well as Sonic Heroes to round the trilogy out. Games like Sonic 2 and 3 are still the all-time greats and have a much wider appeal, but I think games like Adventure or Adventure 2 speak to my taste as a gamer more, and there's no better place to start than with Speed Highway, representing one of the top Sonic games of all time, Sonic Adventure. This game is still so fucking dope, man. If there was, and ever could be, one of the most misunderstood games of all time, I think it might be this one. Because there's honestly a lot of subtle yet very well crafted technique to this game and how it was designed. The SA1 spin dash is one of the greatest moves in any character action focused platformer like it, giving you some of the tightest and free-flowing movement I can think of. Generations, unfortunately, doesn't have such a thing, but at least the Spin Dash Classic has it suitably broken with it. But I think a lot of Adventure's free-flowing nature and design is felt through Speed Highway here. This jump here with the bumpers to push you back if you fail is gnarly as hell, and I'm so glad something like it is here, which also leads into this hotel. But it definitely looks like it costs like $200 a night, and the service probably sucks since all the staff is busy cleaning up after these two fuck-ass hedgehogs destroying everything. That being said, the city itself looks fantastic in HD. Nighttime cityscapes are one of my favorite aesthetics, so this perfectly scratches that itch for me. Adventure also gives me thoughts of darker skies and overtones, which makes the light during the At Dawn section such a refresher at the end, which is the one thing I wish was acknowledged in this incarnation some more. Sure, you get this absolutely breathtaking shot of the sun just barely peeking peeking out of the gloomy clouds. But I just wanted a bit more. Adventure 1 versus Adventure 2 was and always will be one of the most interesting Sonic debates to have. Both have their strengths and weaknesses compared to each other, and they're very comparable to each other in my eyes, so it's really down to what you look for in a Sonic game. Adventure 1's more freedom of movement and experimentation, harkening back to the classics. Or Adventure 2's greater focus on narrow obstacle course level design, which really feels like the modern gameplay formula took the ideas of and really ran with them. I much prefer SA1 to SA2. If something silly happens in the former, you've got a lot more room for error. When anything like that happens in the latter, and it feels like you got a lot less control in a situation like that. With that being said, Generations' representation of a Sonic Adventure 2 with the legendary City Escape is perfect, no question about it. City Escape is one of the greatest first levels in a game of all time. After that iconic opening cutscene, then immediately being thrown into the downhill boarding with that rolling around at the speed of sound, being directly injected into your ears and soul is an unmatched feeling. The only thing holding this stage back from pure platformer perfection is the fact it has to act as a first level, so I always thought it had to hold itself back a little bit. Generation City Escape really feels like this stage has a chance to show its true form. From the power line grinding you can do on the board to some of the tricks and traps the level can pull, and the fucking truck at the end with the 3 buzzsaws that chases you like crazy, then pulls out the fucking turbo rocket thrusters and chases you on the goddamn wall until it dies in a horrible fiery crash like most vehicles driving residential zones. Truly the cream of the crop when it comes to 3D Sonic. Oh yeah, I almost forgot Classic Sonic was here. Don't get me wrong, he's still half the show, so those levels aren't bad by any means. And the truck chasing and stalking you throughout the entire act is fucking hilarious. But at the end of the day, most of Classic Sonic's acts in this game are kinda just fine compared to the biblical feeling I get from most modern Sonic zones. Still fine, but I'd probably take the average Mario Wonder level over one of these. Sonic Heroes? More like Sonic... This game is fine, but I was never really compelled to play more than just Team Sonic's story before getting kinda bored and moving on. It's a fine enough game, but asking you to virtually replay the exact same game 4 times in a row is a bit much, don't you think? What I won't detract from this game is the immaculate vibe. The philosophies of taking some abstract ideas with a touch of realism and making some very unique zone designs out of them, a hallmark of the classic era, and applying that to 3D game design, hasn't really ever been replicated since this game. With most future titles leaning into the more realistic world building with some Sonic flair, which has its detractors, but I personally enjoy that stuff, and love where they took it in places like Unleashed and Colors. More on that later. For now, we're at Seaside Hill, the first zone of this unique title, and such a unique zone to go with it. It kind of just looks like Green Hill 2 at a glance, which is a lot more noticeable considering Green Hill 1 is in this same game, but it does plenty to keep it unique. It basically serves as the game's water level, with the Act 1 version giving some heavy Hydro City vibes. The Hydro City vibes continue into Act 2 a bit, but it's much less focused on underwater stuff, instead giving some downright gorgeous vistas of the ocean and palace. This stage is such a feel-good moment, with there always being at least 3 paths I noticed to take at any time. A cute little nod to Heroes and its 3-character team setup. The most iconic moment of this stage has to be where if you time your path choice correctly, you get sent onto this higher path above the turtles, where you get to drive this little cart the 3 heroes get to pilot, now modified into a 1-seater supercar. And I'm probably going insane from the lack of Outrun content after 2006's Coast to Coast. But like, this has to be a little Outrun send-up, right? Like, even the camera angle is a little reminiscent of that game, the deeper red of the cart now closely matching the iconic Ferrari Testarossa. And the drifting and wider roads feel ripped straight from that game. My delusional ass aside, this level itself is still aces, and a fantastic conclusion to the adventure era, even though this isn't an adventure title, and wasn't even on the Dreamcast because Sega became a third party after Adventure 2. So calling this an adventure title is a little misleading, and since I already explained the mission structure of the last era, I don't think I need to go over every single challenge again, but some highlights include Rouge being so overwhelmingly sexy, even soulless robots are turned on, which like, yeah. She also makes an appearance as a racing opponent in City Escape, using her Heart Bomb from 06 to mess with you. But you get to beat her up to reach the goal. Wish she was the one beating me up. Cream and SBO also have some fun missions this go around. One with you needing to chase SB around Speed Highway and find him using the spotlight. And his other challenge needing you to use these little grapple points placed around the stage to swing you around. This is honestly a really sick gimmick, and something that with a little more fine tuning could have been made into a skill to equip or something. Same with Cream's one mission where she flies around you with some chow, giving you like, I think 10 rings in total from these chow. But there's a skill in the game that does the exact same thing, so it doesn't matter, I think. Her other one is a cute little chow collecting race. Now, rounding off the era, this time we've got Shadow as our rival this time. And this fight is the best one out of them all, no contest. From a gameplay perspective, it's pretty much all controlled at your own pace. No waiting for scripted animations or for your one moment to attack. Just you and Shadow racing around trying to collect those orbs of energy. And from a holy shit, it's Sonic perspective, I mean, it's Sonic versus Shadow. Two of the greatest Sonic characters battling in the climax of one of the greatest Sonic stories to date. Everything about updating this encounter is fantastic, from the two recreating the pose from Adventure 2 Battles intro to their character themes when they power up. Obviously Live and Learn for Sonic, and All Hail Shadow from 06. Choosing a song from that game is a really interesting pick, being from a later title. Having experienced Shadow's future from this point onward, yet going back to where it all started with the edgy Hedgie, from where his legacy began, I can't help but feel a little emotional knowing the dark story he has ahead of him. Which leaves the perfect Chaos boss battle of the era. An absolutely excellent choice for the boss. Not only more adventure representation, which like hell to the yes, but it's also probably the most iconic standalone encounter from any of these games. Final Hazard or Metal Overlord maybe could have worked, but Chaos works perfectly in the realm of boost gameplay. Shoot, Supersonic's movement in that could very well be seen as a predecessor to this game mode. Okay, I know I said boss, but calling it a boss isn't really doing it justice. It's more so just a trickier stage around Station Square, with PC more as set dressing and using his water powers to manipulate the stage and cause obstacles right in front of you. Let me also just say how fucking cool all this is from a narrative standpoint. Chaos, the god of destruction, previously only defeated with the power of the Chaos Emeralds, is now able to be defeated by Sonic, using only his raw speed to defeat this once gargantuan threat. It shows that Sonic really has matured and grown not only as a hero, but as a hedgehog. And here we are, the final era of Sonic Generations, featuring the most recent and modern Sonic locales from titular titles such as Sonic Unleashed, Sonic Colors, and I feel like I'm gonna have a crisis looking at this. So yeah, and what is without question the most contentious inclusion in the game? The first game representing the modern era is Sonic 06's Crisis City. What's even more shocking than its inclusion is the fact this was literally only 5 years out from that game's release. This game is still fresh in the public consciousness even now, and was already in the process of being beaten down like a dead horse all across the internet. The sheer volume and density of Sonic Team's crotches to revive this accursed city, when I'm sure most people just expected this and everything related to this game to remain 6 feet under, never to be brought up again outside of the occasional joke or expense at it. But this is a celebration of Sonic's entire history up to this point, and much like the green hills or rooftops he runs on, this path to where we are now wasn't a smooth one. There have been, and will be, bumps and declines, but when you're going downhill, you gain lots of momentum and speed, enough to shoot you as fast as you can go, and hopefully someday, reach for the stars. Earlier this year, I decided to play 06 for the first time. It was the only game represented in Generations I had never properly played. I only thought it was right to give the game a fair shake. Having done that now, I don't really mind it that much, honestly. I even think a little bit of the hate was overblown. Now, it's obviously still got some glaring flaws, huge useless hubs with hardly anything going on, and a story that really only works if you turn your brain off. No, like, seriously, this plot gets so convoluted I was only able to make the most minor sense of it by immediately forgetting every cutscene I saw, because trying to make a coherent storyline out of this random string of moments is nigh impossible, but the gameplay itself was honestly pretty enjoyable. It's very adventure-like in nature, which that style was growing a little stale at this point, but I got a very similar enjoyment out of it, the same way I did SA2. It's just that the game itself was unfortunately burdened with so much that the development really couldn't have gone anywhere else other than where it ended up. But props to the developers and composers who, even with these overwhelming bearings that they had to carry, still tried to make the best out of a bad situation. Crisis City was definitely the stage choice that made the most sense as well. After conquering the city ravaged by water, fighting through the City of Flames is a really nice touch. This is also probably the most pivotal location of 06, so I guess they just let the speed mend it and gave us the second best thing to come out of it. Now this is a lot more my speed. Unleashed is already one of the greatest Sonic games of all time, and bringing back Rooftop Run for one more encore was a storied choice. Unleashed, being the first game of this new boost style of gameplay, is really good as a first go around. A little rough around the edges, but Generations showed that they needed just a little more time to cook before they really knew how to put this type of gameplay through its paces. This stage has to be the most dense of the entire lineup, which is in no small part to Unleashed and its immaculate world building, going hand in hand with my favorite Sonic story to date, which makes Generations' complete lack of a story look a whole lot worse in comparison. I'm sure you didn't even notice I stopped bringing up this game's story like halfway through, and if you didn't, don't fucking lie. I know you did. I know you did. I know. It's not hard to feel like this game is a bit of a letdown for that reason, but the gameplay is better than most hard drugs and sex, so I think it picks up the slack in that regard. Besides, I knew there wasn't any way that this could have made a better story than Unleashed, so I'll just go back to hyperfixing on that game's story and accept Rooftop Run as a lovely memento of that game. My only complaint about this stage is that I kind of think the music was done in the original better, with that insane guitar in the song. It gave things a much more serious theme, as you are racing to restore the planetary pieces. So this new iteration really doesn't need to be that, since you're basically just doing a victory lap, and the music really evokes those ideas of not having any more worries, and you're able to see how far you've come and bask in that feeling of triumph. All that there is to do is enjoy the moment and get to see the series operating at its absolute best. So in summary, Rip Chip, my GOAT of all time. Last but certainly not least, I'd say at least second or third out of every game in this retrospective, is Sonic Colors' Planet Wisp. Much like Crisis City for 06, this is probably the most pivotal location in all of the game's story, even though I'd argue that the game is even less of a story than Generations. But the Hope Planet of everyone's favorite alien race, the Wisps, was a good choice to make, and even might have been my favorite for how they took the idea of a lush alien landscape being ravaged by Eggman and his invading forces, a very similar ideology to Sonic 1, giving things a nice full circle feeling. You were never really able to get a full grasp of this stage's beauty with the graphics of the Wii, but here it's truly delightful. With the full potential of this stage being seen here, I think a message can really get across now. Such an awe-inspiring landscape with its flat trees and purple drank waterfalls. Being able to take in such unique sights in 3D, then most of the machinery taking on this rigid 2D form makes a lot of sense. Colors is a game that, despite being advertised as a fully fledged Boost 3D game, it really is a 2D game 2/3 of the time, which has very much carried over to this new iteration surprisingly, since pretty much the last third of the stage is only played from 2D. This game is more accepting of a stage's preferred gameplay style than some conservative parents are with their child's preferred pronouns, which reminds me, Classic Sonic has some cool moments this time. The Spike Wisp in the original basically acted as the game's spin dash, so giving that for Classic for some puzzles was a good idea. And you know, this reminds me this isn't the first time that Sonic was off on another planet riddled with Eggman's influence, since that's what CD was all about. Alright, the home stretch. The last round of missions is upon us, and there are some doozies this time around. The absolute highlight of these has to be Vector and Pick Up the Beat, only for how stupid it is, yet kind of fucking infuriating at the same time. At least trying to get an S rank. Okay, I don't want to talk about any more missions, I think. We've gone through plenty, and if you want to see more, then just play the game yourself, you dope. I know I said Crisis City was the second best thing to come out of this train wreck, because the actual best thing is Silver, our final rival. Silver's just such a silly, goofy guy who just so happened to have his entire life and future ruined by the flames of disaster. His battle is a very interesting one too, probably the most original thing in this game, since Silver actually never met Sonic in the future. This is a lot better though, since I couldn't imagine them wanting to recreate Soliana just for a simple boss encounter. Also, I'm sure they don't want to be reminding people of that. The new fight itself is leagues better anyways, being a super fast-paced battle where you need to do homing attack chains off the stuff Silver picks up to hit him, or him psyching you out with the cars he's carrying. Actually, a cool thing you can do is when he holds one piece of junk, and if you're quick enough about it, you can get a free hit on him. Then he summons a spirit bomb of garbage where if you stop boosting, you're dead. Also, this whole thing gave an excuse to put more Sonic 06 on the soundtrack, which is a huge bonus. The penultimate encounter is against the Egg Dragoon, one of my personal favorite Eggman mechs alongside the likes of the Egg Viper or Big Arm, but my most favorite design-wise. Both this and the original counters are great. I absolutely love the original for both Eggman and Sonic just going all out in this fight. From Eggman plummeting Sonic into the core of the earth to Sonic ripping his machine to shreds over the course of the duel. An all-timer of a boss, to be sure. The Generations one isn't as raw, I feel, but a really cool detail I like is how, since this is a much more upgraded form of the Dragoon, it's self-fulfilling a line from Eggman of him saying he'll build a hyper prototype too, and here it is. The battle itself is still great fun when you're rail grinding up here for some extra hits while Egg is saying the same two lines over the whole course of the fight. Then Sonic flipped the scripts instead and chases the mech down the shaft while homing in on him. It's time. Generations of Sonic are all past us now. We look to the future and see what's here before us. The battle against Satan, the Time Eater. I have absolutely no strong feelings on this as a major antagonist, which even the game thought as well, since it revealed Eggman and Robotnik were behind this thing the whole time. What? Sort of a cop-out of this already nothing burger of a story, but I don't know how they were going to try to mold this thing into a compelling standalone boss. I remember hearing that Ian Flynn, a storied Sonic comic writer, expressing his thoughts that the Time Eater was a bizarre fragment of Mephiles/Solaris, paradoxically existing as a distorted entity and a reminder of that game's absolutely fucked up story. I fuck with that concept heavily, and I wish it could have been expounded on if Sega were ever to do something like that.
Supersonic style! Supersonic style!
Hearing this in its original context after playing Smash so many times just gives me whiplash. As it stands, I think this is fine as another big scary monster Sonic has to take on, and I don't know how intentional this is, but I feel like it bears a passing resemblance to this piece of concept art of the original Sonic, with there being a spooky scary sky enemy with big ferocious fangs and menacing eyes, just with the less cartoony and more sinister design. All this to say that despite the game being at its most original here, this is the weakest part of the whole experience. Super Sonic fights up until now haven't been much other than fly into the weak point a couple times and you win. But they've done a lot more than this. It also doesn't help that your friends don't shut the hell up in this fight. And after that questionable line from Shadow, I don't want to hear anyone in this game talk ever again. Well, whatever, a couple smacks later and the final boss is done for.
Time to combine your powers.
Still warm. Time travel.
After all is said and done, Sonic and his friends get to enjoy his party. And this line that is unintentionally one of the best things written about Sonic, next to his codec call in Brawl.
Hey, Sonic! Enjoy your future! It's gonna be great!
You know, I played most of Sonic's entries in a really unorthodox way. Before this, the only Sonic games I had under my belt were Rush, Colors DS, Free Riders, and Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Winter Games. So as you can tell, I obviously was very unfamiliar with this series. I still loved what I played and considered myself a fan, but was still quite uninformed. Until one day, I decided I would try my hand at another game. And I heard Generations was basically like playing every Sonic game in one. And as a kid with little to no money, I thought it was a no-brainer to pick it up. So I somehow learned how to order stuff and bought it on Amazon, and it was almost instantly love at first play. I had never experienced a game with a similar vibe or one that gave me such a feeling as the one I felt playing the game for the first time. Grinding all of the missions during a snow day with my mom is a memory I'll hold on to me for the rest of my life. This game really shaped me into the Sonic loving freak I am today. because afterwards I basically went on to play the rest of the games featured in this game and onward, which is what I think makes this game such a great thing. It allows me to enjoy the storied legacy and all the twists and turns the series has offered, without having to worry about which one I think is the best or which ones are superior to the other. It allows me to express my love and adoration for every game featured, since I think they all have their own merits that are worth being remembered and discussed for generations. I don't know if this is basically a cop-out in saying that all the games are my favorite, but I really don't care. This whole series is a landmark of gaming and should be hailed as such, going up and down and all around, trying to invent, reinvent, and shake itself up while trying to stay relevant will never be a smooth ride. But I think with Sonic, I never wanted it to be. While a series can become complacent, relying on the same old, you have to give Sonic mad props for always wanting to try to experiment or give something new a spin, as it's given us some of the most unique experiences this medium has to offer. It's also a testament to all of the designers, developers, and everyone who's ever been involved with the series. A game like this only comes around if there is true and complete care for a series and itself. None of this would have happened if nobody truly cared for this blue guy. Sonic Generations is crystal clear proof that at least somebody had true love and adoration for the series, as much as anyone would when playing this game. All I have to say is, I hope Sonic enjoyed playing with himself.